Welcome to the YouTube channel. I'm your host, Nate Albaugh. Thanks for joining us here, guys. And this has been our once-a-week series on learning the game of football. You'll be amazed if you just decide, right? You are in the town and you decide to coach your boys' 9U team, 10U team, whatever it is, you decide to coach. It's like we know football, but as soon as you start really digging into the weeds and you're like, man, I got to coach this game, you start going, man, I got a lot to learn. And today is just one of those topics. You know, very popular now has been the thought and idea of the 3 safety system. And you see it a lot, but I have been right there with you where I'm like, conceptually, I think I understand. But you just don't know a system well until you've run the system because, again, everything is, they usually say, there's a saying in the world of football, the guy with the chalk last always wins, right? So if you got the marker for the whiteboard last, you always win, right? So schematically and in theory, so many things can look good in theory when you're drawing them on a board. But if we're going to run a 3 safety system, and we would like to consider it, we need to, like everything, and I always say, you got to go to somebody who has run it. So, made the trip to Fort Myers. This is our content night in Fort Myers, Florida. Probably the coldest night of the year in Fort Myers, Florida. But it feels lovely to this Illinois guy here. But down in Fort Myers, Florida, and with our guest, PJ Gibbs, defensive coordinator at the Community School of Naples. PJ, welcome.
Nate, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, now you are a 3 safety system guy, and so we have got an expert here in the system. If you could, and you could just take right to the whiteboard as soon as you're ready, give us kind of that, it doesn't even have to be real long, just that overview. Like when someone says a 3 safety system, what are they talking about?
I think first, when you think of the 3 safety system, I think a lot of people revert to Iowa State. And what they do for us, our 3 safety systems is about getting athletes and speed on the field. So for down here in Southwest Florida, I equate it like to being from New Jersey. The bears have a hibernation period in the winter, so go inside and sleep and they pack on. But down here in Florida, we got a lot usually a lot of leaner guys. So it's really for us, it's about getting speed and athleticism on the field to, take away your best player or players and have numbers against certain formations.
Well, if you could, Coach, just take to the whiteboard and give us kind of that general, very general overview, just to give someone an idea of what they'd be looking at to see if they might want to learn more.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the front, and I'll kind of work my way to the back end. So defensive line-wise, we keep it pretty simple when we do our installation. So we're going to have a nose guard in a zero technique, which is head up on the center. We'll have our 2 ends will be stand-up 4s, which are head up on the tackle. And then what we'll do is we will slant them, the nose and the backside end, away from the back. So we use a Lucky Ringo call, so Lucky for left, Ringo for right. And then getting into staying in the box, we have our middle linebacker, our Mike linebacker, whose will be in a 30 technique, which is 5 yards over the outside shoulder of the guard. And our Jack linebacker, who's our weak side linebacker, will be to the back, and he'll be at the same depth, 5 yards in outside shade of that guard. So conceptually, we have we give a presentation of a very light box, and what I mean by that is it doesn't look like we have a lot of guys to stop the run pre-snap, but post-snap we will. Then we have our Viper, who's like our nickel. He's a hybrid player, so he's going to designate where the passing strength is. So Viper to the left, the passing strength to the left. Viper to the right, passing strength to the right. And he will apex, meaning the midpoint between the offensive tackle and the slot receiver to his side. So he'll be at that midpoint, same 5-yard depth as the linebackers. Going into our secondary, our corners, we start everything out pressed too high, so we move post-snap. So for us, it's easy for our kids to line up, no matter what coverage we call. Okay, so our corners will be pressed, outside leverage on outside receivers, Our safety, we play field and boundary. So if you think about it, for the younger coaches out here that may not know what that is, if the ball is in the middle of the field and we're facing a right-handed quarterback, our field safety will go to our defensive left. Our boundary safety will go to our defensive right. If the ball's on the hash, field safety goes to the wide side of the field. Boundary safety goes to the short side of the field. Same thing for the corners. All right. And then our most important player in this defense is our rover or our middle safety. So when you start to install this, you tell them to always align over number 3. Well, if you look at the picture here, number 3 in this picture is the running back. So he's going to be 8 yards over the running back, and he is a low hole robber, banana fit player. Okay, and what I mean by that is that he's going to basically, he's unaccounted for in the run scheme and the RPO scheme, so it really helps us in that aspect. And away from the Viper side, which would be the right-hand side here, we're basically going to be playing like press quarters. So like the corner will be Meg, which is man everywhere he goes, locked up. The safety will be at 8 yards, walking down, reading number 2. So he basically has number 2. He'll slow play some things because he knows he has the middle safety's help inside. So that's kind of the basic overview of like day 1 installation against 10 personnel, 2x2.
Well, I want to say thank you to Coach Gibbs for being here and sharing that 3-safety system. Hey, we'll link. He's got tons of resources available for you. We'll link that below. He's also speaking for the online clinic. We'll link that below. Before we let him go, though, let's get to know a little bit more about the 3-safety system. Coach Gibbs, I've always said, I have a lot of people that ask me about my defense, and I do some just working with staffs and but I've always said, and maybe you disagree, but I've always said, every defense has weaknesses, and here are mine, and I kind of list them for them. So what comes to mind for you? Maybe one thing, like this one has a weakness, and it would be, what would that be?
I mean, I think the biggest weakness for us is because we play a lot of trap coverage with our corners. Is if we have corners that are really, first of all, hesitant to tackle because they had to fit the run fit outside in, but also quarterback run game at times and 12 personnel. If you're going to run this defense, I would say I go back to I forget what year it was, but Notre Dame was down here playing Iowa State in Camping World in Orlando. And Iowa State was doing a really good job in the first half because Notre Dame was spread out. Well, they came out of the locker room and 2 tight ends, 1 back, 2 wideouts, and they ran inside zone to death in the second half. So you can't just sit in this. You got to be very multiple in what you do. So I would say tackling the corners and really 12 personnel with the quarterback run game is something you got to plan for.
Okay. How about last question I have for you? If you're talking to let's say we do have a newer coach, or maybe he's coaching his son's 8th grade team. In your opinion, how many men does it take to coach this system? You need to have this many coaches if you're going to run this defense.
I mean, I would say it's going to put a lot of stress on you if you don't have at least 4 guys.
Okay.
Because there's, but again, too, like you can be simplistic with this. You don't have to, get really crazy because. If the kids don't understand that, they're not going to play fast, they're going to play slow. So, that's one thing I tell a lot of coaches is get the fundamentals down. Go and if you want to play fast, the kid's got to know where to line up and what they're doing. Just don't put the cart before the horse.
So you need 4 guys, one for what?
I would say you need a D-line coach, you need a linebackers coach, and then the other 2 you need like a corners and a safeties coach.
Okay.
And the Viper, like what we do is the Viper will go one day with the linebackers, he'll go one day with the DBs because he kind of has to do both.
Yeah. And
then the same thing like with our jack backer, when we move to our 4-down front, he goes up on the line, so he's got to go with the D-line coach one day because he has to learn how to not get reached and squeeze and spill any kind of gap scheme.
Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Again, we'll link all those resources below. Members will be able to see his video that he's doing for us, but he also has lots of other resources for you guys, so we'll link those. But, of course, we appreciate any support you could give, even if that's just giving us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll see you right back here, same time, same place, talking more football next week.